Today, Cambridge University researchers will launch the UK's largest ever study into autism, aiming to achieve better levels of support and understanding for autistic people. The project, called the Spectrum 10K, will recruit 10,000 autistic people from across the UK in order to boost understanding of how biological and environmental factors impact them. The project will be carried out by Cambridge's world-leading autism research centre in partnership with nearby genetics research body, the Wellcome Sanger Institute, and UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles.
We're delighted now to be joined by broadcasters and vocal coaches, Dr. Carrie and David Grant, who have recently opened up about their daughter Talia's battle with autism. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, you're determined to raise awareness of the condition. How encouraged are you by the launch of the UK's largest autism study?
I think we've been wanting a study that looks at not just genetics, but the environmental issues around children, how they're experiencing the world, autistic children. And I think to have the evidence base is essential. You have to have an evidence base before you can effect change. So anytime we're going into, Department of Education, Department of Health, you need to be able to say this is the evidence. So this is what we've been looking for a very long time. And I'm really trusting this survey to be able to deliver that.
First of all, it's great to see you both again. I remember hearing you both sing at Kensington Temple. This is obviously a very personal and very close story to you guys. How difficult was it for you to decide to open up about this?
It was difficult because obviously when one opens up about one's family situation, I think that so often if you're doing anything that puts you in the public eye, people can question your motives. And one of the things that we found is that our being real about our situation has, in fact, enabled a lot of other people with children on the spectrum, a lot of families who are living with autism, to be able to say, yeah, this is my reality too. That, your job or what people perceive you to be doesn't in any way insulate you from the realities of life.
Now, when we heard that you were coming on the show today, everyone in the newsroom was really excited. People are interested in the things that you do. So on that note, what message do you have to other families who are experiencing this condition?
Well, I think that we have seen another recent study that was done that shows that autism families are people that experience combat-like PTSD. And that is a reality of how we all live. But I would say that the bigger reality is not actually the issues with our children. It's actually the issues of accessing services, accessing the right education for our children. Every child has the right to an education, but so many of our autistic children are left behind. And I'm sure as our children get older, we'll realise that actually entering into the world of work, they will probably experience the same things. And that is, as a parent, you never want to think about that for your child. You want the best for your child. You look at your children like we do and we think, wow, they have so many gifts and talents. They have so much to offer the world. We are so positive. We have so much hope for our children. And yet we feel like the world just isn't ready for our children. And it isn't about these massive adjustments that have to be made. A lot of this is about very minor adjustments and actually living in a kinder society, living with schools that work for everyone.
Absolutely agree. Now, what about the signs of autism? What if people are not sure? What advice would you have to them?
I would say that actually one of the great things that I think this study will accomplish is to give people generally a kind of understanding of the multiplicity of signs of autism, the multiplicity of presentations of autism. I think that we've got a very kind of one-size-fits-all perception of what autism looks like. And that's just not the case. We have, for instance, 2 children on the spectrum, and their presentations are so different that if you only took one as being the way that, this is what autism looks like, you would completely dismiss the other and not realise, actually, no, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. And the beauty of this study is that hopefully what it will give is the whole range of presentations on the spectrum so that people won't just any longer be dependent on rhetorical evidence or experiential evidence. There will be empirical evidence of of a much greater and much wider sort of not just a multiplicity of it and the multiplicity of presentations of it, but just how it affects families, how it weaves its way into people's lives beyond just the person who's autistic, how, it's in families and it's throughout society. And there are a lot of people who are in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, who are now getting autism diagnoses because they've just spent their lives feeling, I'm kind of different and I don't know why. I know I don't fit in and I know I have problems with this and nobody else does. Discovering actually they're not weird, they're not different, they're autistic.
No. Now, any child of yours is quite clearly fabulous, but what is it like day to day for your children?
So a day-to-day experience may be that our children may have gone to primary school and our oldest autistic child was diagnosed at 7. We took their piece of paper, with the educational psychologist saying, yes, this child is autistic. And the school said, no, they can't be because they're making eye contact and they're hitting all of their academic targets. So the first thing you're having to do is prove that the health services are telling the truth to the educational services. And then you might say, well, actually, it would be really good if my child, when they get to secondary school, perhaps could have a school buddy or someone who could look out for them, or could they enter the canteen at the beginning of the session so they don't have to pick food after everyone else has breathed all over it. Those things, it felt like we were trying to move the Titanic, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Those things have been so very difficult, to the point where by the time both of our children were about 10 or 11, neither of them wanted to go to school. And our eldest one, who you called Talia, who's now Tylen, when Tylen was 11, they just didn't want to go to school. We were dragging them into school pretty much because we would get in trouble if we weren't taking them into school, until eventually their mental health had a total collapse. And then your ambition as a parent is, I just want to keep my child alive. And that is no way to live. That isn't how parents, not how when you set out on your parenting journey, you imagine it to be. You're just thinking, if I can get them to 16, then that will be a real achievement. And no one wants to live like that. So I guess we're asking those questions. Have our children had those mental health challenges because of the autism or because of the societal experiences that they have in education? We noticed that in that first part of lockdown, from March last year till about January, February this year, we had the most incredible time at home because it was a judgment-free environment. And our children prospered in that environment, and yet put them back in schools. And it's a lot harder. Go out into the world, it's a lot harder. So clearly we need for things to change. If 1 in 100 people are autistic, we need to be listening to that study. We need to be listening to the stats. And we also need to be picking up on things like, I've got Crohn's disease, so gut issues for autistic people, epilepsy. That's why there is a DNA part to this test, is because there are so many other comorbidities. So all of those things are going to help us. And it may seem like a small thing, like going into school and having an experience in school that doesn't traumatize you. But for us, in our lived experience, those things are absolutely vital.
They're all really vital points, and I think it's fantastic that you've opened up this conversation